Hello there, everybody. This is Jay Frost speaking to you from Oxford in the UK. Happy to have you with us today on how to raise. Of course, that's part of our Philanthropy Mastermind series programming, and this one is the CFRE accredited show. So whether you're with us live today, and I hope you are, or whether you're watching this afterwards, please do feel free to gather up those credits towards your certification. And more importantly, use this as an opportunity to know more about this world of course, crowdfunding, which we're going to be discussing today in detail with our guest. But before I get into that, I want to encourage all of you to participate actively if you're here once again with us live by utilizing either the chat or the Q&A. The chat is available to you, usually right at the bottom of your screen. And in fact, it'd be really wonderful for our guest presenter today if you just say hello there right now. In fact, I can see at least one person has already done that. So Daniel, thank you very much for saying hello and welcome back from Abington, PA. Really great to see you here. So other folks who are with us live, we'd love you to join Daniel there. If as much to let our presenter know as to let one another know that you're here and to have a conversation there and to share your wisdom with one another. So thank you, Susie, who's coming in from Goshen, and Valerie from Punta Gorda, and Carrie logging in from Knoxville. And Diana's saying hello to Jack as well, which I appreciate. Jack is our producer. I should be saying to him hello to him more often myself. And who else we have? Clayton and Kathleen and Caroline, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's really great to see all of you here. I am not forgetting you. This is really a place for you to play anyway. But we will be monitoring that throughout, as well as gathering up questions. Although it'd be really helpful to us as we go along today, if you put any questions you have in the Q&A so we won't miss them. Of course, you can use the chat at any time, but please do use the Q&A for your questions. Now, in addition to that, I want to answer a couple questions that inevitably come up for those at least who are with us already. And the first is, can you get a copy of the recording of the session? The answer is yes. So that there will be an email coming to you in the next 48 hours with a link to a recording of the session. And in addition, if this is fine with our guest today, and I will ask her in just a moment, we can also provide you with a link to our slide deck, to the slide deck that she will be sharing. But once again, I'll be asking that of her in just a moment. The other thing is that we have a little survey at the very end, and we would love for you to complete it. It will take you no more than 30 seconds, I promise. But most importantly, it will let us know what you want to see and hear in this series as we go forward. You probably know already that we have 3 shows here, not only How to Raise for the CFRE credits, but also a show on Tuesdays. That's our Frontlines of Social Good show. And of course, the podcast, which drops on Fridays. More on all that later, but that is informed by your survey responses. So please do let us know what you want to see and hear in the future. Now, I want to welcome, of course, to the stage here at How to Raise our guest today, who is Krista Lamp. Now, you may have heard that we had originally scheduled to have her colleague here, who Michelle Boggs, who is over at the Bridge conference today. So those at Bridge are not with us, and nor is Michelle. But we are very grateful and excited to have Krista Lamp here, her colleague, from, of course, GoFundMe, formerly I guess, Classy, as they all came together in a really, really big, exciting company that not only knows how to provide tools that can help people to do crowdfunding, but understands the crowdfunding space in a way that's so important for nonprofits. So today, the stage is hers. Thank you so much, Krista, for being here to share. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks so much for having me. And I know these are big shoes to fill with Michelle having to head to the East Coast to Bridge. So I appreciate you all having me.
It's wonderful to have you. And I'll let you know as soon as your slides are up.
Perfect. I will share now. Nice to see everybody. You should be able to see my slides now. And I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Jay. And thank you everyone for being here. It really is, for me, such an honor to be here with all of you, nonprofit leaders who really understand this unique power of empowering your donors and inspiring action. And so I'm really excited to dig into this topic with you. We know that fundraisers have a lot of their tried and true methods. And so I might try and push you a little bit out of your comfort zone today and really talk about how we can meet donors where they are. Where are the places and spaces that they are already spending time? How do we see people, interacting with causes that they care about online? And how do we as nonprofits, how can we better approach them in these spaces? And so we're going to talk a lot about that today. I really do believe that we are in this new era of giving where purpose and community and cultural connection all come together to drive generosity. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about what we're seeing and some of the trends we've uncovered there. And so whether it's engaging your next generation of donors, activating some more grassroots energy around your cause, or even, just aligning yourselves with your supporters' values, I think there's like a lot of opportunity for the people on the call here today and those listening to really turn this passion that we see into lasting impact. So with that, I will talk a little bit about what we're going to share today. So I think it's really important before we dive into the how to talk about the why. And so we're going to start with what we're seeing in terms of the evolving donor landscape. And then we're going to go into a little bit more about the social and creator economy and what we're seeing, really shape how people are interacting with each other and causes that they care about. And then we're going to talk about this community of 200 million people that we see really active in wanting to, rally around causes, and how nonprofits can take advantage of that community. Spoiler alert, it is our GoFundMe consumer platform and what we have for nonprofits to actually be able to tap in to the excitement that we see happening on the platform. And then we're going to kind of end today with how can you as an organization actually empower your donors to take the lead, to evangelize for your organization, and move forward and all of that. So I'm going to take a second to introduce myself. I am not Michelle Boggs, as Jay so nicely pointed out. My name is Krista Lamp. I lead our nonprofit communications here at GoFundMe. I've actually worked for Classy, now GoFundMe and GoFundMe Pro for about 5.5 years. So for those of you who don't know, Classy is a nonprofit fundraising software. We've been around about 15 years. We were actually acquired by GoFundMe in 2022. And just a couple of months ago, we went through a rebrand. And so now we are better known as GoFundMe Pro. And the reason for that is really because we wanted to take all the powerful software tools that Classy had, as well as the tools that we are building for nonprofits on the consumer GoFundMe platform, and bring those all together under one brand and one suite of products for you. So that's just a little bit more about me, who I am, and my background here. So let's dive into it. All right. I don't think I need to tell you all this, but giving is changing. So we're going to talk a little bit about the trends that we are seeing and what it means for all of you first and foremost. So I think philanthropy, quite honestly, has been through a lot in the 5+ years that I have been fortunate enough to work for this nonprofit tech company. I think I have seen philanthropy change so incredibly much. And we know that it can be really, really hard to keep up and understand what is working and help really manage evolving, I should say, donor expectations. And so these are a few of the things that are top of mind for us and our customers. We're actually going to dive into some of these in a little more detail. So let's talk about it. So let's first talk about donor acquisition and what we're seeing in terms of costs that are rising. So over the past 10 years, customer acquisition costs have skyrocketed. What that means is it is getting harder and more expensive to acquire new donors. And we're not just seeing this happen in fundraising and in philanthropy. This is actually a trend across industries. So we're seeing this even in the for-profit space, that the cost to acquire a new buyer for a for-profit company, or in our case, a new donor or supporter, is getting more expensive. And what this means for many of you, and I'm actually curious to hear if you all agree with it, what we're seeing with our customers is that many organizations are actually seeing diminishing returns on some of their tried and true marketing campaigns and some of the traditional channels of fundraising that used to work for them. And then I don't know how many of you have read the latest M&R benchmarks report that just came out, but they also found in that report that advertising spend is going up for nonprofits. And at the same time, email campaigns, which is a huge marketing tool, are actually raising less. And so we think that's largely in part because the way people are finding and consuming information is evolving. I don't know about you, but I just do like a mass delete of my email mailbox every single morning because the amount of spam emails I have, the amount of marketing emails I have, I don't even read them anymore. And so I think that I'm probably not, alone in saying that. And I am actually finding and interacting with information in new ways. And so we've seen, us as a society go from learning about things on broadcast to then the internet to now search. Things like SEO and Google were so important. And now information is just more fragmented than ever. This is especially true, and we're going to dig into this as the creator and influencer economy has taken shape. So we're seeing just information overload and different ways of gathering information happen. And so what this means, what does this mean for you, right? Like, why is this important? It sounds a little doom and gloom, but what we believe is that it's not just important for you to rely on your own channels. So these are your own marketing channels, your own email lists, your own websites. That's not the only thing that's important for donor acquisition and retention. You also have to now start thinking about the places where supporters are gathering information outside of these channels and how they are representing your brand on their behalf. And so we like to call these earned channels, whether it's social media, whether it's through third-party content, whether it's through reviews, and so we know it can feel daunting. You now have your fundraising strategy for your own channels, and now you've got to think about all these other places and spaces that you need to be and show up because that's where donors and supporters are. We're thinking about that as we build technology to help you all do that. And we'll go into some of the tools that we're building a little bit later, but I know it can feel daunting as a fundraiser to have to layer on something else into your strategy. In addition to donor acquisition costs, we are seeing people trust people much more than institutions. So we're going to talk a little bit about this as it relates to social and creator economy based on some research we did at the end of last year a little bit later. But just in general, here are some trends that we're seeing across the industry. According to a survey that was run by Business Wire, people find other individuals, even influencers, more trustworthy and helpful than brands. And so brands also meaning nonprofits. Luckily, nonprofits have a lot more trust than some of our for-profit counterparts, but overall, people are still trusting individuals over even nonprofits. And so our own research, which we're going to dig into later, actually shows that the majority of Gen Z, so younger generations, of course, would actually trust an impact creator. And I'll share a little bit more about what we mean by impact creator in a bit, but they would actually trust this person to donate funds on their behalf to a cause that they care about. And so we know that people are actually looking to individuals in their network, looking to individuals in their communities, whether that's an influencer, a celebrity, or just somebody they trust in their social network to help them decide where they should put their money, including where they should donate. So that is just a huge shift in how people are giving. And we'll talk about what that means for nonprofits and what steps we could potentially take in a little bit. Also, according to the same M&R benchmarks report that I referenced on the last slides, nonprofits are working with influencers. Over half of us are, so that's great. I'm curious in the chat, are you? What are you seeing? I'd love to know a little bit more. But I still think there are probably some gaps that we all want to talk about there. And then, even as we talk about social media, social is even being further fragmented. So Facebook fundraising, which was obviously a huge staple of a development officer strategy, is actually, not as successful as it used to be. Like Facebook and Instagram are still the most commonly used platforms across our sector. But as you can see here, Facebook fundraising was down significantly in 2024. And we're seeing the rise of TikTok in follower counts. So I see some surprise in the chat of how much it is down. It was a shock to us too. So I think whereas Facebook was this kind of new tried and true place that we could go to for fundraise, it's proving that it's not as successful as maybe it used to be. And then I think underpinning all of these changes, as if we need any more, is the proliferation of data and the potential of AI to actually help us fundraise and market smarter. And so I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, how can we use AI in our organization? It's this buzzworthy term that we're always talking about. And we think there's actually a lot here that can be gained from intelligence, especially when it comes from trusted, reliable data sets. And so, I talked about this, but as a tech company, we really feel like it's our responsibility to work to respond to a lot of these shifts and changes. So a lot of you all don't have to, you have enough on your minds. And we think that, based on what we see across our platforms and this data, we're actually really well positioned to help you and your teams make a really big impact here. All right, so now that we've talked about just general market trends that we're seeing, I want to go in a little bit deeper into the social and creator economy. For those of you who don't know, the creator economy is valued at approximately $250 billion, and that is projected to double to around $500 billion by 2027. So it is a massive opportunity and a massive, as you'll see, way that people are interacting with causes that they care about that we need to be aware of as nonprofit professionals. So I'm going to start with some research that we did in the fall of 2024. GoFundMe did this research really to better understand how people were engaging with causes online. So we asked a plethora of questions of how people are discovering causes online, how they're sharing, whether or not they're sharing. We're going to dig into some of my favorite findings today. But if you want to read the full report, it is called The Social State of Giving. You can find it on GoFundMe.com, but I'm going to share with you, like I said, what I think are the best nuggets from that report today. So the first kind of overarching theme that we found is that most generations are talking about charitable causes, both online and in real life, in equal measure. So that means nonprofits need to be part of these active conversations online and not just through word of mouth. So if we have a really robust fundraising strategy, we need to make sure we are talking about it in both ways. And would love to know which generation you all are in. I am a millennial. I'm an older millennial, so I'm cusp Gen Z. So even some of cusp Gen X, I should say. So even some of the Gen Z terms escape me, and I have a Gen Alpha son, and don't even get me started on Gen Alpha. So welcome. All right. So like I said, I think this convergence of the online mixed with real life really signifies this growing convergence of digital and in real life activism. So people are no longer choosing one over the other. Instead, people are taking their in real life conversations and bringing them into online communities and vice versa. And so this means that voices are being amplified around causes that people are passionate about. And this type of behavior is just coming to the forefront. And so I would love for you all to kind of think about how you show up in both ways. How do you show up for your organization in real life? And how do you show up digitally, and how you create the moments of interaction and engagement for supporters to engage with you in both of these ways. And it seems like we've got a lot of Gen Xers, boomers, Gen Z. So we have a lot of different generations here on the call. So I'm curious if the research that I'm about to share is going to resonate with you all, but we will see. I love that we have a good mix of people on this call today. All right, so let's talk Gen Z buzzword. I'm happy to have someone here representing the Gen Z generation. Would love to get your take on this. But what we found is when you look at sharing behavior online, we learned that half of Gen Z, which is a significant amount of Gen Z, are actually sharing causes or fundraisers on social media at least once a week. That is a lot of chatter. That is a lot of willingness to talk about your organization online. And that is just a significant amount of sharing around causes that are meaningful to them. And so Does this mean that they're necessarily donating to these causes? Like maybe, maybe not. But what we do know is that their voice can be a powerful ally in amplifying your cause and your mission, especially when maybe a Gen Z member has a millennial or Gen X parents who might be paying attention. Um, and so I think what was even more surprising to us is if you look at what the sharing behavior is across generations. And so, of course, we all talk about Gen Z, we talk about how we all need to tap into younger donors, but what was so interesting when I looked at this is this excitement and this willingness to share actually perforated different generations. And so our research shows that we see that millennials and Gen X are also open to sharing, albeit they don't do it necessarily on a weekly basis. We're looking at about monthly, like half or even a bit more are saying that they're talking about causes they care about online or sharing that on a monthly basis. And so we think that this is a significant opportunity to connect with supporters and empower them to share on behalf of your organization and within their networks. And so, and thank you, Jay, for dropping the generational breakdown there too, just so that we're super clear on who we're talking about. But so what we're saying is like, as fundraisers, we are conditioned to ask for the donation, which we obviously cannot stop doing. But what I am challenging you all with today is how else are you asking your donors and supporters to engage with you? Are you asking them to share? Are you asking, or are you just asking them to give? Because the share might actually create these ripple effects throughout your community that, could drive more donations. All right. So now that we talked a little bit about sharing behavior, I want to talk about this concept of impact creators. So we've already mentioned the rising trust in people over organizations, which we believe presents a super unique opportunity to have people advocate and talk about your mission, especially in times of urgent need. And so, again, this is true of younger audiences, but also true of others. And so more specifically, when we dug into our social state of giving research, we found that it's not just our own networks we are listening to. We're actually seeing a rising trust in what we call impact creators, which is basically just a term to describe this emerging genre of influencers that we're seeing who are using their platform for good, including giving to nonprofits. And so I think we think of influencers and creators as maybe a tool for really young generations, but our survey results actually revealed that the majority of people under the age of 42 actually follow an impact creator. So we're not talking about teenagers. We are talking about the majority of people under 42 actually follow these individuals online. And when I saw this, I kind of stopped to myself. Like I said, I am an old millennial on the cusp of millennial and Gen X. And I was like, I don't follow this person online. And then I realized I do. I actually follow this individual. His name is Officer Norman. I think I got connected with him because he used to rescue animals, but he is just a local sheriff down, I want to say in Tennessee. And now I apologize, I can't remember where he is. And he goes around in his community and talks to various people, talks about people that need help, are helping others. And I just loved his feel-good stories. And then occasionally he'll ask people to give to a nonprofit that might be helping in their community or give to an individual who would really use the support. And I can see when I follow him, the outpouring of support that comes in for a community that I've never visited. And I would guess that half of the people that follow him have never visited as well. So while this stat was really surprising to me, when I actually did take a step back and think about who I might follow online, Officer Norman was in there. All right. And then if we continue to talk about, this sentiment, it really doesn't just stop with Gen Z. So we asked a question on whether or not you would trust creators to make a donation on your behalf. And a significant amount of millennials and even Gen X say they would trust these individuals to distribute funds on their behalf. And so what this is showing us is the definition of who we trust is changing. Of course, especially amongst younger generations, but we do see, again, older generations also kind of mirroring this behavior. And so my question and my challenge to you all is, how can your organization actually tap into these individuals, and how can they act as a bridge between your mission and a younger audience? And so if you look at what creators can do for your organization, they can give you this ability to expand your reach, even though many of the people who follow them might not give more than $10. There are a lot of them giving. It is this collective power of giving. And that $10 might be coming from someone who you likely would not have had the ability to reach before. So these are new audiences that you are getting your organization in front of. And I think, I want to be really cognizant of sitting here and telling you all that you should go and, get Kim Kardashian to support your organization. That is not what I am talking about when I'm saying creators. I think, we're not up here saying that your organization should be spending, tons of marketing budget to spin up a robust influencer strategy. I think there are individuals who are likely influential in your existing communities or within their own micro community that you can likely tap into. So look at your board. Is there someone there who has outsized influence with their community? Look at your volunteers. It wouldn't surprise me if some of your volunteers actually have a really big voice in one community or another. And so there are ways that we can tap into individuals who already exist in our own network, who might have this influence to be able to kind of carry our mission forward. And so how are you all supporting, or empowering, I should say, these supporters, no matter how small or large in influence, to help spread the word about your organization and reach new donors? Yeah, and I'm curious, Jay's question too in the chat, like, are you working with any of these community influencers? Have you worked with impact creators in the past? Are you tapping into your volunteers, your board, etc.? Because I think that it's just such a huge, huge opportunity. All right. And I'm going to talk a little bit, I think we've talked today a lot about how people are connecting online, and through social media, through creators. And yes, a lot of this does come with some new challenges, but I think a lot of it opens up opportunity for organizations like yours to meet people where they are. And there's real power. We've already talked about this, in letting your community share your mission authentically in their own words with the people who trust them. And I'm glad, Dr. Sandy, that you asked the question of, where do you find these people? We talked about, potentially having these influential people on your board, volunteers. I think what we know, and our perspective, is that when you think about online communities and where people are gathering around causes that they care about, we see this on GoFundMe day in and day out. And so GoFundMe has a community of 200 million people who are actively coming to our platform to give to their neighbor, to find a nonprofit that they care about. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about the tools that we have to actually make it really easy for your nonprofit to find new donors on this community and inspire action amongst them. So just to give you a little bit an idea of the scale of GoFundMe and what we do, like I said, we have this community of 200 million. I think a lot of you would probably be surprised to know that we actually had 23 million donations to nonprofits last year on GoFundMe. So GoFundMe is known, or I think traditionally known, as this platform for individual giving. What we've seen is there is this organic interest coming to the platform to support nonprofits. And that surprised me. Like I said, we're only about 3 years into this acquisition, and I think I had a completely different perspective of what GoFundMe was for when we initially came together. And so, like I said, we've seen this organic interest. We know people are coming to support nonprofits. And so now it's our job as a technology company to give you the tools to connect with these individuals who might already be really inspired to give to you. 70,000 nonprofits organically received a donation on GoFundMe in the past year. So we will talk a little bit more about some of the free tools and how we actually think you can tap in to different donors and spaces and places where people are. All right, so this is a little bit about what we're going to talk about in terms of how you might be able to tap into new audiences, but we'll talk about all of this in a different way. So, I think when we look at behavior and we look at all the trends we just walked through, we know that people come together around a cause for a lot of reasons. But at its core, it's that people are looking to make a difference, whether it's a difference in an individual's life or whether it's to participate in a movement, around it, let's say a disaster relief, like, the recent Texas floodings or the LA wildfires that happened earlier this year. Or they come to join a community. They want to get to know like-minded individuals who really care about the same causes that they care about. And so, how can you tap in and find that community? And so we know that millions of people come to GoFundMe eager to give back. And so we have this really unique perspective on why people give, and how you all can tap into that. So one tool, just I want to quickly tell you all about, because not a lot of nonprofits know this, but we actually have a free tool that you can use on GoFundMe called Nonprofit Pages. And we believe this is like your first step in connecting with these passionate donors and meeting donors where they are. And so if you haven't, you can go to GoFundMe.com. You can claim your nonprofit page for free, which means you can see all that organic interest I talked about, the 70,000 nonprofits who received donations in 2024 on the platform. You'll be able to become an admin of this page, get that donor information. And that means you can actually bring them into your CRM. You can start, nurturing them like you would your donors that have come through all of your own channels. This is now just another earned surface for you to find supporters who are organically reaching out to you. So again, this is completely free for you all to do. And you guys can come and claim the page and see the traffic and see the people that are naturally coming to you on GoFundMe. Another really interesting way, as you think about meeting supporters where you are, I'm curious in the chat, how many of you have a peer-to-peer program at your organization? What we find through our GoFundMe Pro software is that 4 out of 5 donors who give to a nonprofit through a peer-to-peer campaign are actually new to your organization. So if we go back to that trend of people give to people and people are trusting people over institutions, peer-to-peer has been such a staple in the nonprofit community for so long. So one, if you don't have that as part of your strategy, you definitely should. 2, we're also seeing certain organizations experiment on our consumer platform, on the GoFundMe platform, to see if they can actually raise more dollars. We've just done a test with American Cancer Society where they are actually launching their challenges, which was traditionally done on Facebook. And we know that Facebook fundraising is down. And so they've been looking to say, hey, can I actually use the GoFundMe platform where we know people are already familiar with, we know people are already spending your time there, and can I actually host these on GoFundMe instead of my own website, instead of Facebook? And we're seeing some really good indicators, including, registration rates that are higher, acquisition costs that are lower. So going back to some of those original challenges of rising donor acquisition costs, fundraiser value that's 63% higher, and communication opt-in, which we know is so important to continue to nurture donors, at 10% higher. And so I'm not saying that this should completely rip and replace your own peer-to-peer strategy, but starting to think a little bit differently. If you do have a peer-to-peer strategy, how are you actually meeting people in the spaces they might already be in, on the platforms they're already spending time? And can that actually work for your organization in tandem with more traditional peer-to-peer programs? We also talked about creators and streamers. Like, one, I think, really exciting way, we can talk a little bit about, how to find those creators. But once you have them, a lot of creators are really interested in doing live stream now. And so we've actually, again, built a free tool for them on the GoFundMe platform to be able to live stream and fundraise on behalf of a nonprofit organization. So once you do bring those creators into the fold, if you're wanting them to engage with your organization in different ways that are very real time, very gamified, we do have this tool on GoFundMe that lets the creator and your organization do this completely for free. So this is not, a software that you need to sign up for or subscribe to. All right. And then finally, I just want to talk about empowering donors. So we've talked a lot about the power of the individual today, the power of meeting people in the spaces that they are. And so while making your organization more discoverable, making sure these passionate communities of donors can find you, whether it's through GoFundMe or other platforms, we don't want to start there. We think that once they've found you, we want to ensure that those who support your cause can really be proud of it and can share it with their friends and connect with each other, because we know so much of community-based giving is about connecting with those like-minded individuals. So now that we've seen how people are interacting more closely with causes online, the question still remains, like, how do you do this, right? How do you actually empower your donors to speak on your behalf? So we've already touched on some of the technology we're building that lets you do that. But I just want to talk through a little bit more about making sure you all are thinking about how to do this with your donors. And so why is this important? You know, we found through our research that giving isn't just something that people do anymore. It's really who they are. And more people, or I should say, like, the more people we follow and surround ourselves with, and the causes that we really care about, it's really truly a deeply personal expression of who we are and what we believe in. And so I'm going to tell you a quick story to kind of bring this to life about a friend of mine. But I think it's a really great example of connecting people around a cause. So my friend is a donor to the Innocence Project, which, for those of you who aren't familiar, it's an amazing organization and one that she's really proud to support. They help with a lot of legal fees and legislation to get people that were wrongly convicted recused and out of jail. And so one friend, she's a recurring donor of this organization. She got a t-shirt as part of her recurring donor program. And so one day she happened to be wearing that shirt because she was so proud of supporting that organization. And she was wearing the shirt and she walked into her mom's house. This is her mother. She's very, very close with her mother, only to have her mom say, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know that you gave to the Innocence Project. So do I." And so at this moment, they realized that they were both advocates and participants in the same cause, and it made them feel really, really connected around that cause. That makes a donor stickier, that makes retention higher, that like drives excitement and engagement around your cause. And so if they hadn't had the t-shirt in that moment, how would have they been able to really carry that mission forward? How would they have shown support for that organization? And it just is like a beautiful reminder of like how the causes we support give us our self-identity around the act of giving. And so I think I would challenge you all, how are you finding ways for your supporters to find each other, to really connect around your cause in a way that feels really natural and organic to them and gets them excited and makes them really sticky and, you know, helps you retain them? And so one way we've been thinking about it at GoFundMe is we're looking for really these ways for individuals to rally around the causes they deeply care about. And so we want them to be able to declare their support and vision and make sure these people can find each other. And so the first step we recently launched was the creation of GoFundMe profiles. So I have a profile, anyone can have a profile, and with that profile, you can highlight the philanthropic causes that you support. And you can actually like follow others within your network and see the causes they support as well. So whether it's like-minded individuals that you want to connect with around a cause they support, like your organization, or an influencer who, again, I might follow Jay because I think Jay is really smart and knows great nonprofits. And so I want to follow Jay and see who he's giving to, because that could inspire me to give. And so with profiles, it gives us a way to do that. And then as part of profiles, we also have what's called impact links, which really helps inspire and motivate your community. So I called out peer-to-peer. A lot of people are so passionate about peer-to-peer giving because they can see the impact not only they can make, but their communities can make. And impact links actually allows people to be able to share out their own unique impact link and see the impact of their gift in a way beyond like a traditional peer-to-peer campaign that they might have created for your organization. So Michelle, who again was supposed to be the speaker today, is a great example of that. And you want to talk about the fact that like an influencer or an impact creator does not need to be somebody with millions of followers. This is Michelle Boggs. She works for us. Yes, she has an incredible network on LinkedIn, but she often shares either GoFundMe individual campaign she's given to or the nonprofit she supports. Through her impact link, you can see here that she's inspired over 1,300 people to give, which is pretty incredible. That just shows outside of a traditional peer-to-peer model, it shows immediate impact with your supporters, which we think is really exciting and helps to kind of break beyond these traditional nonprofit fundraising barriers and allows people to see immediate impact for your organization. And then we also just launched a product called Giving Funds, which is our answer to a traditional DAF structure, with the hopes of driving more accessible DAF donors, like making DAF technology more accessible to everyone, and then also helping that money get out the door to organizations like yours. So we talked about nonprofit pages. If you have claimed your nonprofit page, you can also see the donors who are giving to you through our new Giving Funds product. So we're really excited about that as well. So before I get into a Q&A, because I'd love to just understand more of how this content is resonating with you, what you think is realistic for your organization, I'm going to just do a quick recap. So we've talked about all the ways fundraising is evolving, how costs are rising, trust is shifting towards individuals, and even how AI might be changing the way we work. We know that the social and creator economy is critical in driving new ways of support, especially because Gen Z and millennials are highly engaged online, and we will see these generations inherit quite a bit of money coming up with the great wealth transfer. And then on top of just being inspirational, we know that those impact creators drive action. People are trusting these creators to guide their giving decisions, and that trust is actually reshaping fundraising. And we think that the community that is already very active through GoFundMe and the tools that we are building for all of you can help you tap into some of these new audiences with very little barrier to entry. And, you know, like at the crux of it, how are you empowering your donors? We think empowering your donors to carry your mission forward so you don't have to do all the work as a fundraiser is really key. People want to express who they are through the causes they support, and we need to give them the tools to be able to do so and watch them carry our missions even further. So with that, I will stop sharing. And Jay, I would love to kind of get your reactions and hear from the crowd.
Yeah, thank you very much for all that. And you gave us a lot in a short amount of time. So I hope everybody was able to digest that. It's so important, and especially the trends that you shared, and then the very practical tools for implementing strategies built around those trends. So we aren't waiting for 5 years before we figure out what to do. And you know, we've had a lot of sessions recently on issues that kind of parallel with some of this, right? From what's going on in the Giving USA results, where we're seeing that there's this issue that many organizations have with trying to find, ways to either engage new donors or maintain and retain donors, which is such a big issue. We're doing really well at the top, not so well in the rest. And it seems like part of the solution is not just the tools you talked about, but also understanding what's going on in the whole economy.
Yes.
So we're really, really happy to see that. If anybody does have questions, and do list them in the Q&A, I'm seeing them gather up right now, so I'm going to share them with Krista in just one second. Before I do that, Krista, first I want to make sure people know how they can reach you, and maybe, first of all, can people get a copy of the slide deck? May we share that with people?
Yes, of course. You are more than welcome to share it with everybody after this.
So once again, we'll make sure that everybody who's here live will get an email with a link to the recording as well as the slides. And then if people want to just know more about what's going on at GoFundMe and follow your work, how can they do that before we move on?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn, of course, under Krista Lamp, or I am also happy if you reach out to Jay and team to share my email directly. I'm happy to connect with all of you.
Thank you for that. Also, just a quick note, in the series, we do not have a How to Raise next Thursday. However, in addition to having these recordings that you can always rely on, we do have our sessions next week, or rather one session next week of the Frontlines of Social Good show. We are not advertising who those guests are now because we're making those shows very timely. So if you're trying to follow a lot of the issues that are occurring right now in the marketplace, as far as I know, it's the only webcast which is covering those issues every single week. So I hope you'll join us for that. That's at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And then, of course, our podcast this week. Right now, we have Kay Sprinkle Grace there with a really kind of intimate interview about her life. She's the author of 7 books in the field, which have been very important to many of us in fundraising. She talks about the rest of what she's writing right now, much of which has not yet been published. So you'll enjoy that wherever you like to listen. And tomorrow night, we'll drop our interview with Art Taylor, who was for a long time the head of the BBB Wise Giving Alliance and is now the president at AFP. Quite an interesting figure about his life. Now, with that, let's go to the Q&A. So, Krista, I know we have a bunch of things here. And let me start with the first one that came up from Faith, who was asking, can I get help from a donor from other countries? So I guess the real question here is this platform country specific or not?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I will say, obviously, GoFundMe is an international platform. Our GoFundMe Pro and a lot of our nonprofit tools are specific to the US. But that being said, we see fundraisers started for all types of causes around the world. Kenya is not a supported country right now on the GoFundMe platform, but that doesn't mean we can't process donations from all over. So, what I would say to you, Faith, is I can't sit here and say that I am an expert in donor strategy and Kenyan fundraising, but I would guess that a lot of these same trends that we're seeing here in North America and the US would apply to those in Kenya as well. So just making sure your organization is active on social media, asking those who already support your organization to share, not just give. I think these are some important tools that you could probably take back as well.
And there may be some domestic platforms for you in Kenya or across the region. The reason we're focusing, of course, today is because we have access to Krista's expertise and because GoFundMe, frankly, is the big daddy or big mama or whatever you want to say in this field, because there are so many people who utilize it. But that doesn't mean that there aren't tools that are available for you. So I hope that you'll avail yourself of the resources in the region of fundraising associations that are tapped into those networks and those tools that might be more site specific. And keep coming back to the series, because as we cover these things, I'm sure we'll have other things for you. And then we have a question from Sandy, Dr. Sandy, who asked that question about GFM Pro. So could you talk about the difference between the one and the other?
Of course. So she said that she already has a GoFundMe campaign. And so what's the difference between that and GoFundMe Pro? So without having seen your specific campaign, what I will say is we have made vast improvements to how nonprofits can fundraise on the GoFundMe platform. So you can still go to GoFundMe, fundraise for your neighbor, your friend, etc. But if you are fundraising for your nonprofit with those nonprofit pages and those GoFundMe Pro tools now on that consumer platform, you can claim your nonprofit page. You can attach fundraisers to that page specifically, so you can log in, get that donor data. If someone is organically coming to GoFundMe to start a fundraiser for your organization, it will be connected to that nonprofit page. So you will also get all of that information. And then, of course, as part of GoFundMe Pro and our entire offering, we do have the tools, the software tools that are very white labeled, that allow you to fundraise on your own website, through your own events and peer-to-peer campaign. Many of you would know those tools, formerly known as Classy, but they are all part of that GoFundMe Pro ecosystem now. So Sandy, I'm happy to look at a campaign for you too, and see if look at the specifics of your campaign as well.
And needless to say that more information on GoFundMe in general is available at the GoFundMe site, because someone was asking that. But I'm really glad you said what you just said, because while no one's asked it today, it's inevitable. Someone might say, I just saw this conversation. Krista talked about how we have an opportunity to reach out to different pools of people we frankly maybe unintentionally ignored. And this is one way to do it. So can we do it? And there might be reticence among the people who weren't here with us today. And one way to overcome that reluctance is not only to share some of what we're sharing right now, but to also be able to talk to the fact that products, GoFundMe, and I'm sure others, have white label appearances. So in other words, if you, whether you're doing it this way or whether you do it through, let's say, a CRM that you have that might have something akin to this, maybe not. The idea is not to take your audience away from you. It's to bring more of an audience to you, and for the people who are already with you, to give them an avenue to engage with you regularly, both as a donor and as an advocate, right? I mean, is that fair?
That is, I think that is such a good distinction, Jay. Like you need to continue to do your tried and true fundraising strategies. We are not saying giving has evolved, so like abandon ship. Like
Right.
you continue to fundraise through your own website, continue to do direct appeals, continue to send those emails, even though the results might not be as good as maybe they once were. What we see is it is a both and, not an either or. And so we sit at this like very lucky position, I think, because we can see this everything happening across this incredible community that is GoFundMe. And so what the little light bulb went off in our head and said, look, things are fragmented, people are all over the place. There's already this platform where we have all this organic activity. If only we could better connect nonprofits with that and give them an opportunity for donor acquisition over here and things like that, because we know we're trying to solve for all the trends that we talked about. So it is not an either or, it is a both and. We are here to complement your existing strategy for sure.
And you're also not taking people away, which I know was one of the big fears. Like, oh, we're going to have this new platform. It's going to be a lot of difficulty. Plus, we're going to lose our audience. So it's not
well, and I think that
a clear point.
No, and transparently, I think that is a lot of the perception. Like we see the trends of, Giving USA. Giving was up, obviously, with Giving USA. It still remains about 2% of GDP. And I think, as we've started to see some of these, let's call them non-traditional ways of giving to your individual or your neighbor, the fear is that that's actually taking away from traditional philanthropic giving. What we're seeing is it's like, if you could get somebody involved in that web of philanthropy, no matter how, we're actually seeing rising tides raise all ships. And so that is what we're trying to create more of, bring more people into the web of philanthropy, because we think it will help all nonprofits.
Yes, exactly. In fact, this is something Jack, our producer, and I have talked about a lot with regard to things like Twitch, which is something which, again, is relatively unknown by many of the professionals in our field, even though it's extraordinarily robust, especially among kind of younger support networks, individual creators and influencers who are using their platforms to raise tremendous amounts of money, including for some name brand charities like St. Jude's. And that's just one of many, many hundreds, if not thousands, of examples of people raising tens or hundreds of millions of dollars on a platform many of us don't even discuss.
Yes.
Now, I know we had a question here from Becky about influencers, saying, I'd love to do this, but we are a small, and this is, by the way, Becky, a lot of people feel this way and have this impression.
Yes.
We're a small, local, regional nonprofit. What advice do you have, Krista, beyond just the local influencers for finding how to approach and ask for their support?
Yeah, let me just answer Caroline's question in the chat. For clarification, GoFundMe Pro is for US-based nonprofits only. Donations can be accepted from any country. So I just want to clarify that. And then going to Becky's question, I think this is like the question I probably get asked most often. And what I would say is like, again, go to your existing network. I think what we are seeing in terms of demonstration of influencers and creators is really at the crux of that, I should say, is people trust people. And so it doesn't necessarily even need to be an influencer. It can just be a person of influence. And I think that is a distinction. A good example being Michelle Boggs, my colleague. Like, people trust her because they know she works in the sector, she works in the space. So her friends and colleagues and connections come to her and say, oh, this disaster just happened, where should I donate? And people look to her as a resource, as an expert. And so I think that's why she's had such like outsized influence. And so I would say, again, not to, be repetitive here, but look at your board. Are there people on your board that you think could have some sort of outsized influence, or who have influence in your community? Look at your volunteers if you do have volunteers. Like, my guess is, because they're volunteering at your organization, their friends and their networks might use them as a resource. And so start with some of that, or your staff, I should say. It doesn't even have to be your board or volunteers. I would say start there. That is a really easy place to start. And then you can kind of extend outward from there. So I think, again, looking in your local community, I think depending on what the cause category is for your organization, it doesn't need to be a big, massive, influential person. But, let's say you're a local animal advocacy organization, and you know that there is a local news person who has a dog and loves her dog, like that might be a
Yes.
good place to start.
That's such a great example. And in fact, Becky had replied again saying that she appreciated it. It's just that they're relatively unknown. And the example you just cited is one that if you were to go onto YouTube, just searching around just for fun, you'd probably run into half a dozen examples today of a local weather reporter who has made it part of their conversation because it keeps their viewers. And so that's one way for them to talk about a local charity. So there are many ways to do this. Sometimes those people are quite local. It burnishes their brand as well as yours to tie together with a local, relatively unknown organization, which is doing good in the community. 7 on Your Side was something like this, I know, for many Channel 7s and ABCs around the country. So this is possible. And you mentioned that your board is sometimes maybe reluctant to speak out. That's understandable. One question might be, are they unfamiliar, have not seen the tools? So if they haven't had that success, maybe it's a way to try it. And if they are finding that they have some success, they might get excited, sort of like the example that you cited, Krista, with the mother and the daughter who had no idea that we're supporting the same charity until it came up on a t-shirt.
Isn't that wild?
Right, but it could have come up on their, I don't know, on their, whatever the social media platform is, where they both mentioned they were doing a fundraiser.
That's a great point, Jay. I think, if you're looking in your local community, Becky, and again, I don't know the cause or the sector that you serve, but you might want to just take a look at some of those local news people or local bloggers, and you might be surprised that one day they might post something about a cause they're passionate about, and then it might be yours. Like I think to the point of people are sharing more and more on social media about causes that they're passionate about. That's a great place to start. And you might just find by happy accident that there's this really organic tie. And I think in general, that's what I would say. Like when you're looking at somebody to support your cause, it has to be organic. And so finding those people who already really care about what you also care about and the work that you're doing, that's just going to come across much more authentically and I think be better overall for your organization.
And just a quick follow-up on that. Donor retention is the biggest problem in our field because it's so expensive to acquire. You've just given us a lot of ways to acquire inexpensively people who have a heart for our work. Now, once we attract them, do you find that retention is, the same? It's a little easier, it's harder when they come in through these networks?
It's a really good question. Transparently, I don't think we have enough data to like draw conclusions. This concept is still so new. What I think I will say more anecdotally is when people feel like they are in community with your cause, they are stickier. And so in that example of the mother and the daughter, finding that connection, like to me, it would be very hard to cancel your recurring gift now that you've made that like very personal connection that you and your mother are like advocates. Or if you have supported friend who was maybe going through cancer and then, went on to support the American Cancer Society, you now have that personal connection to a cause that I believe makes it a lot harder to say, no, I'm not going to give here anymore. Again, don't have the data quite yet to back it up. It's something we're actually looking in and exploring kind of like personal causality with nonprofit giving and things like that. But just anecdotally, I feel like that could really, really be something that helps with retention.
Krista, I didn't go through your whole bio when we began. I know that people can look that up. I hope they will, and both you and your colleague, Michelle. But you've been in this field for a while. You've been with Classy, now GoFundMe, for a while. But that's not all you've done in your career. You have some perspective that is above and beyond even this really important part of our work. What has been the most surprising to you, and the thing that if you were going to give one lesson to people, maybe even product agnostic, that you would say to people, yes, this is the thing, this is the way to get started?
Oh, that is such a good question. I think my background is in just traditional media relations and communications. I've worked with a lot of benefit corporations, kind of CSR programs and nonprofits in my previous life before coming over here to the nonprofit tech world. And I think one of the biggest surprises to me when I started working in the like quote for good space is like in my head it was just, oh yeah, it's this is for good product or this is a for good organization, everybody wants to support it. And I don't think I realized the saturation or the fact that like what I care deeply about is not what the person next to me cares deeply about. And so that's not a good answer of like what people can do next. I think is the thing that most surprised me. I think what I've learned with that is like, and I think is relevant to what I talked about today, is you have to find your people and the people that care most about what you kind of care most about too. And really that like sense of community around a cause, I think is so important. Because when I started to, I volunteered for a human trafficking organization really early on in my career. And it stemmed from a personal connection of like being in Southeast Asia and seeing a lot of that firsthand. And I just came home and was like, I need to get involved. That is a hard topic to get involved with. And when I started to find my people who also cared a lot about that, it was really incredible how much we like instantly bonded and rallied around that. And so each of you have your cause that you are so passionate about. And if you can really take those supporters who also care so much about it and create this sense of community and attachment, and how are you helping them not only find your organization, but find each other and find the others in their community that care about you, I think it just presents this opportunity for us to have this ripple effect for our cause.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Krista.
Of course. And nice to meet you all. Thank you all for being here. Again, if you have any other questions, please feel free to connect with me.
And if you have any questions, of course, about this series, you can always connect with me as well. Please be on the lookout for that email. If you need to reach me here, and I'm sure Jack can put this in the chat, you can reach me either through LinkedIn or j@donorsearch.net. And you also see a little QR code at the end here, which will let you go directly to the DonorSearch site, the site of our sponsor that sponsored everything we do, which will be about 140 episodes this year and over 720 so far since 2016. And that content is all for you, available over at the DonorSearch website at donorsearch.net, at least the last 2 years of it. And also a lot of information about your donors. So if you care about them, and I'm sure you do, you can learn more about them there. But with that, I want to thank you for being here. Please join us for the podcast and next Tuesday's show. And then the following week, we'll be back at How to Raise. See you all next time. Till then, take care. Thank you, Krista.